right, we'll start again. Today is April 14th, 2021. The Broker Responsibility Working Group meeting is coming to order. So we'll jump straight to number 2, housekeeping. I believe Vanessa has some information for us.
Yes, it's the same thing I say every time, but there's always so much time between meetings that I think everyone forgets, including myself. So if you are not speaking, if you can mute, that helps us with the background noise. If you do want to speak, there's the raise hand function. Depending on how you're joining, you should see it's either in the middle of the screen or up towards the top. Now it looks like a little hand. For me, it looks like a hand with a smiley face. So you can click on that and raise your hand. If you raise your hand, remember to unraise your hand, which I had to remind myself yesterday means you go back to that little smiley face hand and then you can push on the hand and it will unraise. If we do hear a lot of background noise, we may go in, if you've forgotten to mute, one of us may go in and mute you. We cannot unmute you, but you can unmute yourself. We only have the power to mute. And for the chat function for open meetings purposes, we ask that you not use the chat unless you are having tech issues, something along those lines. Just that way we have all of the conversation out in the open and for everyone to hear. So that really helps us. If that starts to become an issue, we'll throw out a reminder. And with that, I think those are all the housekeeping issues I cover.
Thank you. We're going to go on to number 3, remarks from the chair. And mostly all I have to say today is that just keep in mind that we're going to have a new chair coming up. So if you're interested or if you have somebody you have in mind, that will definitely come up probably in the next meeting. Also, if for some reason you may not be interested in continuing on this committee, then let Vanessa or Chelsea or anybody know so they can plan accordingly. Let's go on to number 4, discussion regarding Broker Responsibility Working Group and ESAC crossover related to agent-broker relationship and path forward.
Leslie, you have a hand up. Sorry, you have got a hand up from Brian.
Sorry. Brian?
Just congratulations to Leslie Lerner for her appointment to the commission as a new member to the Texas Real Estate Commission.
Thank you, Brian.
Thus the need for a new chair, I understand.
Pardon?
And thus the need for a new chair for this committee. You're
correct. Thank you. But I'm hoping to be able to still be involved in these meetings because I think we're going great places. I think I just saw Kalea get on the line. Is that right? I want to introduce you all to Kalea Youngblood. She is the chair of ESAC, and Abby and Vanessa and I met with her a couple weeks ago to discuss a crossover of how we can blend education with what we're trying to do as the Broker Responsibility Working Group in order to get better trained agents and brokers. We talked about education, we talked about outreach and broker responsibility and competency. We touched on a lot of different things. So we're going to be talking about this in our meeting later, but I want to introduce Kalea and see what she has to say about how we can all work together to have better trained agents. Kalea?
Good morning. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for letting me join you today. I am on kid duty. If you can see, I've got a little minion with me today, so I'm multitasking, but I definitely wanted to join your meeting and say hello and thank you for collaborating with ESAC on this. We are definitely very interested, as you can imagine, with all of these specifically broker agent responsibility topics, and it's been a long time hot topic with us, and so we are definitely wanting to collaborate, especially where it becomes, excuse me one second, especially where it becomes within our purview from an education standpoint. And so, you know, wherever we can chime in and help, we definitely have some ideas. we definitely have hot topics and things and suggestions that we've brought forth. So just say when and we will be there.
Thank you. They were also in on our survey response. Some of their members responded to us. Jennifer, you want to discuss a little bit about the courses that we talk about for our crossover?
Sure. Thanks, Leslie. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. So I just wanted to kind of give you a brief overview. So we have the Broker Responsibility Working Group, which is this group. We also have a Broker Responsibility Writing Group, which is a group of subject matter experts, in other words, qualified and experienced brokers, appointed by the commission chair that help write the 6-hour non-elective broker responsibility course. That course is written and rewritten every 2 years to ensure it is current and addresses important trends and changes in the industry. This course is an update course and is not written to speak to new agents entering the field. It is really an update for those who are currently practicing. Separately, there is the 30-hour real estate brokerage course, which is required as part of broker pre-licensing. Several years ago, ESAC recommended and the commission adopted required content for this and all pre-licensing courses. This means that education providers are required to cover specific content when developing the real estate brokerage course, but unlike the broker responsibility update course, the 6-hour non-elective course, we don't write the content for the education providers. So we specify the topics. Some of the topics in the 30-hour real estate brokerage pre-licensing course include brokerage outlook and trends, starting a brokerage business, ethical and legal business practices, analyzing the market, managing risk, and financing your business. There are a few topics in that content outline that include recruiting and hiring, orientation programs, and training programs. But the bulk of this course is dedicated to building a real estate brokerage business. So I just wanted to add that to date, I've heard a couple of different thoughts about how we could better prepare brokers and sales agents for working together through education. One idea is to make revisions to the topics required in the 30-hour real estate brokerage course. Another has been to create a separate course that specifically addresses the sales agent and broker relationship and responsibilities. If this group, the Broker Responsibility Working Group, decides to move in one of those directions, that's specifically where you would engage ESAC. So that's just kind of an overview of what we have now, what it addresses, and how it works.
Does anybody have any questions for Jennifer or Kalea? Okay. Jan, I can't hear.
Thank you. Just in putting what you all said with, and I was taking a call from Barbara Russell, sorry, trying to get her on. I didn't hear everything that Kalea said, but then putting that together with the survey that I read recently, it sounds like brokers aren't being responsible. That's number one. But I don't know how you can mandate it. And I really looked at what you all said about the application itself. So maybe some things could be relooked at there to make it work. But we're not teaching the logistics, what I saw in requests, we're not teaching the procedural logistics to how to sell a house, the basics that agents need to learn, and that's why they don't think they're learning enough, and therefore they end up being not competent, from what I see. So it's not just in what do we teach broker responsibility to do, it's what do we do before they take the test, because they feel so unprepared, and then it all falls on the broker. And we don't know, some of them have had more experience than others, and you get caught in a quagmire. And
And
I want
I
to say,
agree
I
with
don't want to say one, excuse me. Nobody is going to do anything or accomplish anything. And this is something I should have talked over with Chelsea and Vanessa before I'm spitting it out. But because TREC is only reactive until we, the realtors, start complaining about other people, nothing's going to happen. And I sit on enforcement, and I asked Michael Malloy for statistics because I know I have seen them somewhere. It's like all of us in these groups are worried about all the complaints. Guys, only 2.5% or less of the agents in Texas get complaints. That's not bad. In fact, that's fantastic in most realms. But we all handle all the stuff ourselves. And I am one, and I stayed under TREC's radar, as far under their radar for 50 odd years, because I don't want to go through the hassle of a TREC complaint. But until we start complaining, nothing's going to change anything. I don't think. We've got to get their attention some way. And we all know realtors don't read, and I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you. I'm muting myself.
Dan, I would totally agree with you. I think in my experience, when I talk to agents or even a consumer about complaining, they don't want, first they say nothing's ever going to happen. Someone will get upset, it's not worth their time. They also say they're scared of retaliation. I actually have an issue right now in which an agent completely did something wrong to a client of mine, and I told my clients, y'all are welcome to complain, and they're like, but we have to see her in the community, so they're scared to complain. So I don't know how to get over that issue, number one. But I also, going back to your response about educating the agent pre-licensing, I think after they're licensed in that experience, it needs to be overseen more because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to apply it in the real world. And the contracts I see, I don't know about you, you just kind of like go, oh my gosh, how could they write this? Or the way they talk, or, the things they do just isn't, I guess, clearly trained. So there needs to be something after licensing, is my thought.
If I may, Leslie, just chime in and back on that. I know how running these meetings are. You don't always see the hands. I 100% agree. I definitely think that there is a combination of things that are at hand here. And it sounds like, yes, education is always something, but education isn't going to fix it all. And we've seen that, we can educate to death. You can bring a horse to water, right? But you can't make them drink. With that said, there are two places that I think that we can be very effective. One of them is at the consumer level, and the other one is at the pre-licensure level with regards to agent competency on how to hire a broker as their sponsor. It's a little bit of the chicken and the egg here, but what I mean by this is many times agents who are looking for a sponsor don't realize that they are the ones doing the interviewing and not as much the other way around. Yes, the broker wants to hire somebody that they think is going to be a good salesperson. They think it's going to follow the rules in general and abide by the policies. That's a good broker. But what happens when the agent knows my broker is responsible for X, Y, Z. My broker is responsible for ensuring my competency. My broker is responsible for ensuring that I am following these things and mentorship, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think that's being taught at the pre-licensure level. It's all about passing the test. It's all about the excitement of becoming licensed. I think that we can be effective in that regard. And so, a broker would perk up, if you will, if they know that the consumer is being educated on both how to file a complaint, but also what the competencies are of a practitioner and should be. And I've said this to Jennifer and Vanessa, but a consumer awareness campaign on behalf of TREC would be very powerful, I think. In addition, maybe looking at, from an ESAC perspective, some of the education with regards to agents understanding and maybe even practicing, what questions do I ask a broker when I'm interviewing or when I'm looking to become sponsored? And so that's just my perspective. We'll take a look at all of it, but it seems to me what you are all saying and what we say a lot at ESAC is we need both. Yes, and. So if we could do the work of hitting those areas we think would be most effective with a combination of both education as well as outreach, I think we could find some synergy and really do good work.
Kalea, do you believe, because I hear this a lot, that a lot of the new agents are green and they're looking for their best split because that's really all they care about at the time is the money they're going to get. So interviewing an agent, I think, is an excellent idea, but we need to get over what's my split and then going for the money rather than the trade.
Valid. I think that you tell them, look,
Right.
It's not all about the money. You will lose money if all you care about is the money. And that's not what this business is about. The most successful agents are the ones that are not so desperate. And so that's just a conversation, and you can write talking points around that all day long. But those are the agents that won't make it in the business.
So, Dan, is your hand up? Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
There was a B hand up before mine.
Oh,
Not
Bill? It's off.
Yeah, that's me. It's Bill Roth. I really am trying to learn about this too, and I'm trying to get educated. But and I'm really asking the question: is there really? I mean, is there really that many? Are we doing such a bad job as real estate agents and as brokers? I think, out of the millions of transactions that we're doing, and out of all the deals that are being, all the people that are having successful home sales and property sales and commercial stuff and leases stuff, to have just a small amount of complaints, and I think Jan, mentioned it, that if there's 2% of the thing, that's a lot. That's not even, you always want to, try to hit to zero, but that's not possible. But gosh, it seems like we're doing a good job, and I think we should get credit for it. And I think the commission should be complimented that we're doing a good job. And I don't know that we have to over-regulate folks. And I'm not trying to avoid having responsibility, and I'm not trying to avoid having more, things to have to do. But gosh, we're doing the right thing. And 99% of us, or 98% of us, are doing the right thing. So why not sort of acknowledge that, encourage that, say, keep doing it. I think we've got a good set of regulations. I think we got good education. I think we got good regulation. And I think the consumer, I think the idea that you want consumers to be educated, to know what their questions are and what they should, how to interview people, that's just good business. But gosh, people aren't suing each other over home sales. People aren't fighting over bad transactions in a larger capacity that I'm aware of. And again, I don't know that it's the agents and the brokers that are, if there is difficulties in these transactions, I don't know that it's in those in our part of the world, our venue as being agents or brokers. So again, I don't know. I'm torn because I want to protect consumers. I want to do the right thing. I want to make sure that we have an honorable, professional profession. And I really think we need to be professionals, we're just not commissioned salespeople. And I think we're living up to that. But anyway, I really like some comment. I keep hearing from everybody that everybody thinks, gosh, we're doing such a terrible job, and there's so many bad folks out there, and and they're not doing the right thing, and they're not educated, and they don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's just in my world, I'm just not seeing it. And I'd really like some feedback from some of you all who are maybe a little bit more experienced and maybe have a broader reach than I do. I think I'm sort of tuned in, but gosh, maybe I'm not.
Kalea, did you have something to say?
Always. Sorry. I wholeheartedly agree, and I'll get in a little soapbox and then I'll stop because staff has heard me say this 100 times. One thing that really I think we could do better at with regards to that is data. I feel like we struggle with what our threshold is with regards to complaints. I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said. How do we know if 2% or 10% of all of licensees and all of the transactions and the $1 billion of real estate that sells every year in Texas is, that small threshold of complaints is what we're just willing to tolerate by virtue of doing business in Texas. But we don't have any data around, hey, maybe if I add, a 6-hour broker responsibility course, it will reduce complaints. Maybe if I do offer that property management specialist designation that we went around and around about for years, it will actually reduce complaints because we don't have data, a dashboard or anything to really look at as far as a benchmark of if this, we'll be able to see in the next legislative session, it actually reduced complaints or it actually was effective in that regard. And so I agree. I think we're doing a great job. I definitely think that all of especially this latest, mandatory contracts course was very positive and a great step forward. But I think until we can confidently say using the actual numbers of, hey guys, that contracts course reduced complaints by X% over the next 3 years or 2 years. And that's hard because we feel like we're sort of shooting at the hip with, well, what if we did this? Or I'm seeing this in the marketplace. And we could tactically come up with all of the ideas, but I really think that it would behoove us to maybe take a step back and say, Chelsea, what can we do with regards to a benchmark or some sort of data around these complaints? And what are, of the complaints?
Can you come here a second?
We say property management is the #1 complaint driver. Well, is that true? And what have we done to reduce that, and has it worked from a data standpoint? So I agree with you. I think that 2%, even 10% is low with regards to complaints overall. That doesn't take into account that, many people, to Leslie's point, just are scared or are not complaining and should be. I definitely agree with that. But, how do we really make decisions and make rule changes with regards to our numbers being so low, but yet we're seeing bad apples in the marketplace? Thank you.
Dan? Jan? We can't hear you.
Sorry, my neighbor started mowing his lawn. I think that I hope that ESAC will not give up on the property management certification. I think it is important, and I think people would do that if they are really interested in property management. And I think that will, if we ever get it passed, that would help the complaint situation. I think what Bill is saying is he's working with commercial people and they are business related. And what happens to the residential people is we are hit in the face every day with emotional, irrational buyers and sellers. And I'm just thinking, listening to all of you, if we can get Texas realtors to work with us and be more open to anonymous ethical complaints coming through, so that Leslie could complain openly about whoever this agent is that botched a situation, and vice versa. Because I will tell you, the anonymous complaints that end up coming through TREC, we got one, and it was an advertising complaint, and I will swear to you all that it was an ex-wife of a brand new agent. And our E&O did not cover it, and it cost this brand new agent $3,000, or us participating. That was crazy, and we never knew who complained. And it was, he clicked one box wrong on a Facebook ad. So anonymous complaints is not an answer. And if you have a deal that you've got a complaint about, and you don't know who complained about, you don't know that the seller complained or the buyer complained, those participants did know, but otherwise, did it come from the other realtor? And most people handle it on their own until we start getting valid complaints. And a lot of them are ethical complaints, not related to track. They're related to a deal and emotion. And I saw a comment that, you know, ombudsman, I love the ombudsman's program, and I've only worked with it twice in all these years, but they were very helpful. So, and maybe Trek could set up an ombudsman thing. I don't know. That's staff's job to see if it's legal. And maybe, but people don't complain. We just fret about it and stew about it in the field.
Brian?
Thank you. Clay, I applaud you and your work group on education. I think you're having great success, and the education, like the contract course, is very effective. And I think you're right. I think it will reduce complaints. Bill, I think working in commercial, you probably are working with more professional people. Reading through the brainstorming and the survey and some of the comments made, I think there is a real issue with lack of supervision and inexperienced agents. And I think that's where we need to focus some of our attention is how do we as professional agents make a complaint against a non-ethical agent or a bad agent who's harming a consumer, besides going the professional standards route. And I think that's the challenge that we have, is just there's I think the complaints that we see are the tip of the iceberg. I think, you know, there's a whole lot of unscrupulous activity that goes on below the surface that never gets reported. And I think if this work group can focus on some of those issues, we may see more complaints, but I think that would be being effective in reducing that type of behavior. I hope that makes sense.
So perfect, Brian. And I think this could actually lead us into going to our survey results. Bob, did you have something?
Well, yeah, but I'll go ahead and wait. Let's get into the survey. I just had a follow-up comment, but it'll probably be appropriate in some part of the survey. So I'll pass and move on to that.
Thank you. Amber, do you want to put up our slides?
I will. She doesn't
Thank
have.
you. Oh, okay. There were 3 commonalities that really came up a lot in all of our survey results, and that was competency, broker responsibility, and outreach. And probably the best way to dig into all of this is maybe take one topic per meeting and dig into it. But what I think we'll do today is do a brief overview of kind of what came up and then decide where to go from here. I think outreach may be a great idea, a place to start, because that also will touch on the competency part of this as well.
Can you see, can everybody see this?
Yes.
And it's an okay size, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, sorry, I can only see like a tiny, when I share, I can only see a tiny window, and for some reason the person I'm seeing is just a little phone call person, so I can't see anybody nod heads at the moment. Okay, and so I will echo what Leslie just said. She and I have talked about these results quite a bit, and And like she said, there it kind of ended up falling into 3 major categories, and she'll walk you through the high level overview. But you know, I think this is a place where you guys could establish a roadmap of future meetings. And I think I said this earlier before we'd started that I think there's enough material in here for 30 meetings. So the thought was to do that, and if I know in advance which I will, but the area that you want to cover in your meeting, then I can prep on the staff side and bring you the subject matter experts you need, the division directors you need. For example, later on, we're going to get into talking about that supplement A and the experience points. And we've got the director of licensing, Denise, here. She'll be available to answer any questions, explain the current process, things like that. So you know, one of the ones that Leslie just mentioned was outreach. That's something where, you know, we can go through the high level responses on, and if that's what you choose to do for your next meeting, then I can bring on, and she's actually on this meeting right now, Christine, but she and I can work together to prepare and be ready to listen to your recommendations and come back with some ideas. She can give you an overview of what she does, social media, what she covers, things that have worked, things that haven't worked, things like that. So really we'll do the high level overview is what Leslie and I discussed, and then we can focus and really dig into these topics, because I think everyone seems to be coming back to these big 3. And with that, I will be quiet and pass it to Leslie. Leslie, you tell me when you want me to change the
You can go ahead and
slide.
change.
Okay.
I think also what we may do is, like Vanessa said, we're going to do high level, and we may send out to you like a copy of everything put together, and you can highlight what you think is important, and then we can kind of dig down deeper into those and get rid of the other ones, because there are so many responses. It's really hard to even digest everything.
Yeah, and I'll send that out. Leslie put together a very comprehensive slideshow of all those responses, which will probably be very helpful for you guys to review. And we'll look, I spoke with Commissioner Russell, we'll look at sorting survey responses in the future before we turn them into materials, maybe to make it a little bit more cohesive in how you read it.
Okay, so just once again, the biggest issues were competency, broker responsibility, and outreach. In competency, many people said there was a lack of understanding of contracts and addenda, which I think we've all talked about in the past. That has been a big deal. Geographic competency, which we're going to go through later, it's really hard to define and hard to measure. We talked about this next one also several times, a mentorship or an apprentice program to make sure brokers have some oversight of their agents. Right now, as the rules read, it's their first transaction, and many of us in our meetings have stated that's just not enough. The next one is pretty much the same as others, just hands-on training and oversight, and a mentor looking over for the first however many transactions we decide to look into. There's also been talk, and I don't even know that this could happen, a provisional license until the sales are complete and the SAE education hours are. So they would also have to show proof of sales or experience, kind of like we do for our broker's license.
Yeah, and Leslie, I'll interject here and say that as you're going through these, just as a reminder, so these were the initial answers, and then, like I said, if we end up dialing it down to those 3 topics, we can look at the comments and figure out at a more focused level, okay, this is something we could do. This is something that we could do, or this is something that we cannot do. Here, it's really and truly just all your answers. We have not pushed through it in an attempt to make that distinction yet. These are really just the raw data, the raw answers.
Yes, very true. But actually, this also is narrowed down from all the answers. Like, we did take some stuff out that we didn't feel was possible or really didn't pertain to this. So you want to go to the next one? Okay, and so this is kind of on the same lines of what we were just talking about, but there was this certification once their initial sales are completed. I know also there was a letter to ESAC recently about virtual testing and virtual classes. You could possibly make the initial salesperson license in the classroom only, so they have to interact with others and the teacher. And then somebody said there definitely should be more education for both the broker and the sales agent levels. And so, as I said, this is dialed down from actually all the responses, but we do have all the responses put together for you as well. You can go ahead. Hi, Holly. Welcome.
Hi.
To the meeting.
Thank you.
So, just a recap, just real quick, we kind of went through all of the information people gave us and found 3 commonalities: competency, broker responsibility, and outreach. So we're just kind of looking at what people said. This is kind of a shortened version of what everything that came to us. And we're going to send out the information so everybody can highlight what they feel is important so we can dial it down even more.
Wonderful.
So, so we're on to broker responsibility, and we're going back, which is the same as kind of what we were talking about a minute ago, more oversight and training. There's a lack of supervision, and maybe there could be a requirement that a designated supervisor could be in place for X amount of licenses. Broker agent relationships. The brokers aren't available for their agents. There's a lack of training and mentoring of agents by many brokers. This again, the broker agent relationship, there's issues with that, and the agent should interview the broker, which Kalea just discussed with us. Go ahead. I guess this is the same as before. Limit the number of agents a supervisor or broker can oversee. Limit the number of LLCs a broker can sponsor. This could be talked about more in another meeting about enforcement. The enforcement division could take action against the brokers who really are not providing the oversight they should be towards their sales agents. This probably goes hand in hand with the complaint process, which if people aren't making complaints, then there's really not much they can do. But we will have enforcement, I believe, the next meeting, correct, Vanessa?
Drive toward Westwood Drive, then turn right onto Westwood Drive.
Yes. Well, once it depends, right? It depends on
right.
which you choose. I do think I saw a lot in there about enforcement and ideas, and some of it had to do with you know, the process itself. Some of it had to do with ideas like this of what you could go after. And I think I talked to our director of enforcement about this, and he's not able to attend today's meeting, but I did talk to him that if this is something that you guys want to get into in terms of broker responsibility, you want to take a look at some of the enforcement components, which it sounds like you do, right? You want to look at that complaint process. You want to look at how things are happening. I can invite him to the meeting where we do that. And similar to what I was saying with subject matter expert, he can tell you what the process is. Commissioner Miller gave you some of the stats. He can give you some of the stats. If there's things specifically you want to know in advance, I can let him know. We can prepare for that meeting. I think too, you know, this group is a little bit different in that you kind of look at everything, right? It's not, you know, ESAC is education, things like that. This is pretty broad, but there's recommendations that will work and some that won't work just simply by what we're bound to as a regulatory or as a licensing agency. You know, the will of the commission, they would need to look at recommendations, things like that. But all of that said, I think the best way for this group, and I talked to Leslie about this, is to have that subject matter expert available to you at the meeting, so that you can have that dialogue with them and know, oh, okay, that could work, or that couldn't work because the process doesn't actually allow for this, but maybe there's a solution here or there, and just really have that dialogue prior to taking any recommendations to the commission. So I would love to make him available to you. He's very interested in it. He could not be for this one, but I've sent him all of your responses already. And depending on which meeting, if it's the next one or whichever path you choose, I will make sure he is there and available for that.
Thank you. And then last one on this broker responsibility, which we touched on just a second ago anyways, is the rule that states that at a minimum, a sales agent performs a real estate brokerage activity for the first time. The broker must require that the sales agent receive coaching and assistance from an experienced license holder competent for that activity. So number one, as we know, there's not a way to enforce the rule, probably. And then otherwise that only one transaction is not enough. So they need, someone responded, they need guidance for a minimum of 1 year. So those are all ideas we have on that. You want to go to the outreach? So the third one we had was outreach, which obviously combines with a lot of this. And outreach is considered as training or teaching the public or agents or brokers themselves. So it's not just reaching out to the public, it's reaching out to licensees and to the public. So one person says, with the education and mentorship improve the effectiveness of an agent, the next step will be to educate the consumer. And that's another thing Kalea discussed, is educating the consumer of what is expected, what is a competent agent. There could be a section on the new Trek website for training videos. It would include explanations of contract language, the proper way to complete forms. I mean, those are all things that can be discussed if putting videos on the Trek website is a possibility. And from what I understand, they're in the works for a new website. I don't know when that's supposed to even happen. You can have a task force in geographic areas that can be tied to enforcement data, but as Kalea discussed, there's not that much data to be looked at the moment. There could be a joint effort with local associations, and brokerages can request involvement at office meetings, et cetera. So just reaching out into the community. And instead of sending more emails, possibly send videos and collect data of who's opening them, what geographic areas, and that can maybe give us some more insight and data. Kalea, I see your hand up.
I'm getting stickers, sorry. Yes, so one thought I had on this is, and this is just from my old practitioner days, and I don't know if this is something we can even mandate, but I do know some good agents provide their education, they print off their education from Trek and provide it as a tactic they use for listing presentations to show their competence and to, boast their education as a selling tool, if you will. And I can't help but wonder, I love that idea and I love that practice, but I can't help but wonder if that is something that could be necessary for brokers to keep in contract files, or if there's, some sort of mandate or best practice, if you will, that agents need to show proof of their competence to the consumer by virtue of the education they hold at Trek. And, the 18-hour agent will jump off the page against the agent that has taken the investment in themselves of education and increasing and, doing all the designations and staying up to speed on education. So it was just a thought I had with, that keeps me up at night with regards to this, for consideration of this body and this context. I didn't put it in my survey, but I thought of it afterwards, so I thought I would share.
Thank you. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so there, once again, we're back at videos for consumers or a consumer awareness campaign. Someone mentioned also when you get your license or when you transfer your license on the TREC website, that there be a confirmation screen in case you're changing your email address to another brokerage URL or whatever, because many times people forget to change their email address in the TREC website. So when emails go out, it's going nowhere. Next one is convincing an agent to pay attention to communication from TREC or TXR will require education. And then social media campaigns with training videos. So a lot of videos, people are going more towards videos and less towards words.
And
next slide. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me do a little bit of a thought on this. I find this idea of outreach just to always be a very exciting thing for any agency to do. I'm going to admit that on a personal level. I like a lot of these ideas, and we do have, like I said, Christine Anderson is in this meeting, and I had mentioned to her the idea of coming forward to another meeting and going through what it is she does, where she sees there could be some room, and then also her taking these bullet points, which she's seeing for the first time right now. So I would not ask her to speak to them. But coming forward and getting some ideas and seeing where we do have success. We have these coffees with the commission right now, and there's just tons of people on there. Like where is the outreach successful? And I really liked some of the ideas that came in here. So I think in terms from what Leslie and I talked about, we really felt like your recommendations in this department could have significant impact. But I will, once we do that meeting, I will most certainly work with her to get her here and to start looking at what the options are in terms of consumer awareness, in terms of, licensee awareness, what kind of things that, could be put out and who could put them out. So.
Perfect. Okay, so then we are getting into what we've touched on earlier is the complaint process and accountability. Make it simpler and return a faster response. Some people think it takes too long to get a response. Someone wanted to report all of the enforcement actions in each TREC advisor. Help the consumer understand how they can file a complaint by using a consumer awareness campaign. Find more enforcement investigators to make it a more timely process. Include information about the complaint process on the IABF form. The information about brokerage services does give the TREC website, but does not talk about complaints per se. Competency definitions. This is the part that we ask you, how do you define competency? I define competency as knowing what the heck you are doing, everything about it from contract area to contingencies. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Competency is not measured by taking a class or a test. Competency includes knowledge of ethics and rules, ability to educate clients about real estate process and set expectations, understanding of contracts and forms, knowing how to communicate with clients, agents, and others, familiarity with the geographic areas, able to comprehend inspection reports and the seller's disclosure, familiarity with the title and closing process, understanding of construction, remodeling, and home repair, dedicated to making clients a priority and spending time necessary to ensure their needs are met, making sure all is done to try to protect clients and others from future legal actions. So that's kind of all encompassing. Next slide. The definition of competency should be broker's responsibility to establish, monitor, and enforce. It should not be actionable or defined by regulations. Brokers, agents have ample education, training, mentoring, and experience requirements. Defining competency should be based on circumstances and not defined by TREC. Competency is knowing what you are doing in all aspects of real estate. Competency means being qualified and having ability to perform the task at hand. having the necessary knowledge and skills to get it done. Okay, so this is the harder part, the geographic competency definition. Competency is knowing how you live in that area. Competency should be measured by being able to compare properties, familiar with localities, understand contracts, and needed addendum for the localities. Some examples of your knowledge to be competent would be knowledge of all zoning laws and changes to zoning, any entity making changes to a neighborhood that might constitute a taking, deed restrictions, HOA documents, historic district ordinances, etc. Access to data in market or geographic area is one of the fundamentals of competency in that marketplace. Go ahead. Geographic competency is not practical to enforce or define. A major part of broker agent scope of work is analyzing and researching markets on an ongoing basis. We should be able and trained to know the market. A person would be competent in a perfect geographic market area if they're knowledgeable about the market issues and conditions in that geographic area. They also need to be knowledgeable at the type of property that is involved. Trek rule defines competency that relates to geographic competency as be informed on the local market issues and conditions affecting real estate in the geographic area where a license holder provides services to a client, be informed on national, state, and local issues, the development in the real estate industry. I think this includes national, state, and local issues that affect real estate in that particular geographic area. I think part of the issue about the geographic competency, and that we saw in several comments that weren't all in there, were how do you enforce geographic competency? So those are our survey results. So I think what the best idea would be is for Vanessa to send these out, to send the whole version out and let you highlight what you feel is important so we can drill down a little bit more and get some clear definition of where to go from here. Would all of you be in favor of taking one of these topics per meeting and figuring out what to do for outreach, what to do for competency, and what to do with broker responsibility? Or do you want to tackle it in some other way? Anybody? I think they're all going to tie into each other. Bill, you have something to say? Bill?
All of these, I think it's a great idea. I think a lot of these are complicated issues, and I think they're going to take some little bit of time for discussion. So I think it'd be better to sort of narrow it down to specific topics per meeting.
Okay, would y'all like to start with outreach? Because that could give us some path to start with in the sooner rather than later. We start with some sort of guidance. I guess nobody wants to speak up. I guess we'll go with outreach first.
This is Holly. Outreach is perfect.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think now we can move to our next agenda item, which looking at supplement A, which is the experience report for brokers. And Vanessa, is there any way you can put up what we currently have?
Yes. Is that, yes. Can you give me a second?
Absolutely. So
Vanessa, I have it pulled up. If you'd like, I can share my screen.
I would love that. Thank you.
As y'all know, also, we did give recommendations for the experience points, which haven't come back. So we're still at our 3,600 points at the moment, which probably doesn't have anything to do with how to simplify this form. I know in one of the first meetings I was on, this came up about simplifying this form. And it's a good place to go right now because this can be done without going through the legislature. So this is our current form, and it pretty much says that we have 3,600 points, and this is how you can make them and how much per transaction. Where this point system came from, nobody really knows. So months ago when we started this process, I believe Mark was still here, we talked about simplifying this by taking off the listing agreements and representation agreements, which you see as number 4 and 5 on the bottom part of this. And if you go through this form, that is on every section. So if we look at this, we also got, isn't it on every section? This is for residential, isn't it on the commercial as well? Yes. So yes, and the points are vary throughout sections. So what we did was we got some recommendations. We also have 3 people who sent in visuals of what could be done. And so we can review those and then maybe put it onto staff to come back to us with a recommendation of what they think could work. And we could go from there in the next meeting. Do you want to go back? Do you have the slides open, Vanessa?
She had to just step away for a second. She'll be right back.
Oh, okay. No worries. Once Vanessa comes back, we have 3 different drafts, or maybe 4 different drafts. One is, I know, the same because it's just 3,600 points or 7,200 points, which was our recommendation. And we can review what was done on those. Does anybody have anything? I see a hand up. I just don't know. Jan, is that your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
And first, I apologize if, as a commissioner, I'm supposed to keep my mouth shut, and I'll try to if somebody tells me that. But there was a task force that met, just like the advertising task force took 3 years to get the wordsmithing all done. That process did happen because I sat on several committee meetings and things like that for this new point system. And I can remember the history of some of it, but it was all valid and approved and all that at the time.
Thank you. Brian, I believe this is yours. Do you want to kind of give us a brief synopsis?
Yeah, it's just looking at this and looking at the what we currently have, it's probably difficult to see the changes that I've made, but currently the applicant for the broker's license is recording points in each of those boxes. And so that means they have to do the calculation outside of this form and then bring their points and input it into the current. What I've done is change it from inputting points to actually inputting the transactions and letting the form calculate the points itself. So it's a simple change, but in my mind, it seemed to make more sense. I moved around some of the instruction sentences just to put them in place where it makes more sense. The transaction identification list, that's number 10 that I put right here, is currently located on a different page. I personally, when I made my application, I missed that and I got rejected. And so just putting it right there that says, hey, besides counting your transactions, you also need to send in a spreadsheet. You know, I just try to simplify it a little bit. And for me, this seems to make a little bit more sense.
Thank you. Jan, I see your hand up.
I just didn't lower it, sorry.
That's okay. Bill, did you have something to say?
I have a question. On number 4 in the rig, or if you want to look at Brian's, that's okay too. On line 4, I really don't understand what the second part of that sentence means. When it says you must have at least one category or transaction type for each year for at least 4 years. That to me is confusing. And if what does that mean? Does it mean that you have to have every kind of transaction every year for 4 years? I don't think so.
You have, it's to me, and I don't know, and Denise can answer probably. To me, you have to have at least one transaction for at least 4 out of the 5 years.
But it doesn't
Leslie,
have
you're correct. It's speaking more to the, 1 year in each of the years. So that language could be clarified.
So let me just, and again, to help get to the wordsmithing, is it that we're allowing, you can have a sale in year 1, you could have a lease in year 2, you could have a listing in year 3, as long as you add up to the 3,600 points? Is that how it's supposed to work?
As long as there's one transaction in every year of any type.
Okay, so that needs to be clarified. Then the second thing, so you can't have all of your transactions in 1 year totaling 3,600 points.
Correct. That's the idea, is to spread it out.
Okay, so I think
Have accumulated it over at least 4 years.
Okay, so I think that sentence needs to be reworded. I would suggest. And then in number 7, well, I'm looking at Brian's deal, but in number 7 of the regular deal, of the regular form, it says there's 2 TREC number AFFB, affidavits in support of applicant claims and experiences. I don't understand what that is all about on number 7. Can you explain to me what's supposed to happen there?
Absolutely. That relates to the applicant who, whose sponsoring broker has passed away, or they're unable to get a hold of them for whatever reason. That allows those 2 affidavits submitted together allow for that applicant to support the experience that they're claiming without that broker's signature.
So who are those people that are supposed to be attesting to that? I mean, how do you, if your broker disappeared, if he's gone, if you're by yourself, how do you prove that up? What is that? I mean, what I'm trying to get at, is that a practical, and does it make sense, and is it something that can be actually done?
Yes, so there's one affidavit that's submitted by the applicant, attesting and saying that I've made attempts to get this information, to get the signature, and have been unable to, and then can provide the reason. And then the other 2 affidavits are from individuals who have direct knowledge of the applicant's efforts to obtain their broker's signature, or of the work experience. This doesn't happen all that often, but it is an avenue for the sales agent who obtained experience and now, wouldn't have to start over necessarily. This gives them an avenue to support their claim of experience if they're unable to get that signature from the broker.
No, I get why you want to have it, but what I'm struggling with is I don't think that I don't think you can accomplish it. In other words, that the 2 affidavits in support, I think, are very difficult to find. If there's nobody there, I'm just saying, I don't know that it would seem to me that in these situations that it'd be very difficult to have the 2 extra affidavits of support from people who may or may not be, you may not have anybody that can attest to it, that can help you, that can be an affidavit. So I guess, is there another avenue if you can't produce those 2 affidavits, if there is nobody else that can support your claim? How do you get over that hurdle?
I don't know that that's come up. I think that, it doesn't have to be someone in a supervisory role. So the individuals that have had to resort to submitting these affidavits to support their experience claim have been able to find, a coworker or, another broker who worked in the office with them, someone else who has that knowledge of the experience.
And is there a reason why you need 2 of them?
And I can't speak to when that was established, but I believe it's just to further support it since it's not the sponsoring broker. I probably, I'm speculating here, probably because 2 is better than 1.
My next question has to do with down in the property management on all 3 of the sections. Under property management, how is that transaction calculated? It says rent collections per property. What does that mean? Is it really should be how many properties you're managing, or is it how much money you're collecting, or is it how many months you're what are we trying to accomplish there? I would think that we're trying to say that how many properties do you manage? And so whether it's a house, whether it's a shopping center, whether it's an office building, it shouldn't be rent collections per property. It should be properties, right?
I'm going to pull up the rule just so that I don't misspeak on how exactly that is calculated. So if you give me just a moment, I can pull that up. It's 25 points per property per year, as defined in 535.56.
Okay, so my suggestion would be that we delete rent collections per property. So it should just say property per year
Wonderful.
in all 3 of those sections. Thank you for clarifying those things for me.
Absolutely. I'm just taking some notes so that when staff gets together and compiles all of y'all's suggestions, we can capture it all.
Okay. Can we go to the submission, please?
We have at least one hand up, I think.
Oh,
right?
Brian, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I just wanted to speak to Bill's questions real quickly. With regard to the number of transactions mean something different to our licensees. It means a closed sale, where we're using that phrase to count a listing agreement. And so I wouldn't call a listing agreement or a buyer rep agreement a transaction. So probably just adjusting that word would be helpful. Bill, you were asking about the affidavits and certification, and that those certifications are on page 3 of the form, and that's why I had suggested moving that line of instruction back to page 3 where it's addressed. And then I totally agree with you about rent collections. When I completed my form, I assumed that I was proving my management by having collected the rent. And so I'm managing that property because I collected the rent. And so I think your suggestion on that language is appropriate.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this one and the following one are pretty much the same. One's just with 3,600 points and the other one was with the 7,200 points. Or really, actually, it's moving it down. It's taking a 0 off the 3,600 and putting it as 360, and it's taking a 0 off the 7,200 and putting it as 720. So just kind of lowering that point system. So people looking at us are going, oh my gosh, how do you get 3,600 points or whatever? It's kind of just lowering the points, but it's not taking anything else away. It did take away the listings in the representation agreements. So it took off those because we had talked about that before, but it's pretty much the same thing, but just lowering it by a 0 for the most part. So instead of a closed residential transaction being 300 points, it would be 30 points. So it's just pretty much just simplifying it, the point system. So, and then can we go to I guess, down one page. So, and it's, okay, and then for the transaction experience, it's pretty much just listing the address and the MLS number, the role the person played, the close date, and the type of transaction. So it's pretty much a checklist for the experience. So, and then the next page, that's the same thing for the 720 points. And then I think Bill sent in his, this was from Bill, I believe. This is his highlighted form. Bill, did you already address this in your?
Yeah, those were the questions that I already asked. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody have any further thoughts on supplement A so we can find a recommendation for staff to go and put their brains together and come back to us with some sort of idea or recommendation? Bob Baker?
Hi, and I appreciate the comments that have been made, Bill and Brian, and these are all good. One of the things that and maybe Commissioner Miller can speak to when they first started coming up with all these points and all, one of the reactions that I often get from some of my agents who decide to become a broker and go through the process, and they look at this form even before these revisions, they say, oh, really? That's all it takes to become a broker? If I like do 2 transactions a year over 4 years, I've got enough points. If I have, and the reality is this is so incredibly minimal. I would hope at some point in time that we can move beyond this. In our recent version of Broker Responsibility Working Group, one of the proposals that went forward and was caught in the middle of the Sunset Commission and all those things was that we created a distinction between a broker and a sponsoring broker. Because a sponsoring broker, you know, as we talk about broker responsibility and all those things, that's truly at the broker responsibility, sponsoring broker level. But at some point in time, even with the challenge that we have with the legislature and their feeling about obstacles and set up things like that, this is so incredibly minimal that in my mind, it decreases the value of a broker. That being a broker should be at significantly higher level than what this requires. And maybe I'm just missing the point here, but when I look at the number of transactions you have to do for the last 5 years to get those 3,600 points, it's incredibly minimal. In fact, I'm not sure how the agent has stayed in the business if that's all they've done.
Bob, I think we also have addressed that, and I don't know if you were on this committee or not by that time this year, but we have asked or recommended doubling the points from 3,600 to 7,200.
Okay, I was not at the time, so I missed it. So good idea. Hopefully we'll make some progress moving forward. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Does anyone that did not turn in a response have anything to say? Okay, so can we entertain a motion to have staff take our recommendations today or what people have turned in and come back with a draft for the next meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Anybody second?
This is Holly. I second.
Thank you. So Holly seconded the motion to have staff take our recommendations that people have submitted and come back with a draft for us. Okay. Moving on to number 7, public comment, including any written public comment received on non-agenda items. Were there any comments? I don't believe so. Okay, discussion and possible action regarding future agenda items and meeting dates. I know we don't have.
Leslie, I'm sorry to interrupt. You had a motion and a second, but you didn't have a vote.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
All of those that are in favor, say aye or yay. I get the
Yay.
thumbs up.
Aye.
Yay.
Aye.
Okay. All of those that are not, motion carries. Okay. Next meeting date. I know we have a limited amount of people today. Will July 14th work, or people traveling, or what's going on during July?
There was, there in my packet, there was a public comment or a comment from another agent. So back to.
Oh, you're right. There was.
Yeah.
Leslie, I think we had talked about it. Let me.
Oh, that's right. That is right. I did see it. It was somebody that was concerned with the competency and about the training of agents, which I think we are trying to address. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah, I think Leslie and I had talked about that and how we thought a lot of the topics would likely have been covered in that initial discussion. But if you guys have things you want to add regarding this comment, you can here.
This is talking about the training and an apprenticeship and just, I guess, total frustration with what's going on in the marketplace. Does anybody have any comments about that? I think this will hopefully get addressed in the next couple meetings, and I think we're on the road to doing that, and we have been. It's just going to take some time. So let's go back. July 14th. Are people traveling, or is July 14th good? At that meeting, I think we'll talk about outreach a little bit more. So we will try to go with July 14th. And please remember, as we talked about earlier, be thinking about if you would like to be a chair, if you want to continue on with your involvement in this group. We just need to have some direction moving forward. So that'll be coming up in the next meeting as well. Is there anything else anybody would like to say before we adjourn? Bob Baker?
What time on the 14th?
10 a.m.
10, okay.
Same time, same place.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So it is now 11:24, and the next meeting of the Broker Responsibility Working Group will be on July 14th at 10 a.m. So this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, Leslie, for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.